Hi there, and welcome to the Live Vybrant podcast, where we explore how to live with energy, purpose, and intention. I'm your host, Joshua Haag, a holistic lifestyle, performance, and success coach with a background in professional sports and 2 decades of coaching experience. Each week, I sit down with experts across a multitude of fields, including wellness, finance, and personal growth, to uncover practical strategies that will help you thrive in every area of life. Let's dive in and help you live your most vibrant life. I'm so excited to have Becca Chanis here today, and I butchered that last name a couple times. I'm so excited to have you on. Becca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Now, Becca is a middle school teacher, interestingly enough, who found me via her podcast that she was trying to get off the ground, where she was interviewing healthcare clinicians, so people in the space, and she reached out to me, and oddly enough, we really hit it off, and come full circle. I'm super excited to dive into our education system here in the South LA area and kind of her take on it as she's been transitioning out, interestingly enough. So Becca, just give us your background. What grades did you teach? Where did you teach? Just give us your overview in terms of kind of how you came to be.
Sure. So when I went to university, I originally wanted to be a doctor. I was studying physiology, which is where I got my bachelor's degree. But as I went through college, I realized maybe 10 more years of school isn't really what is in my best interest. So I decided to go into teaching. So I got my single subject science teaching credential and my master's in education, emphasis in curriculum and instruction. And then I got that paid for by the federal government. So they gave me $40,000. In turn, I had to teach in a Title I school for 5 years. So I had my first 3 years of teaching in South LA. I then went to 2 more years of teaching in Northridge, and then I just finished my last 2 years of teaching in Santa Paula, California.
And for those of you who might not know, for those listening, what's Title I?
Title I is when 30% or more of the student population is at or below poverty level. Most of my schools, like my one in South LA, 99% of students were at poverty level or below, and same in Northridge and Santa Paula.
Man alive. Okay, so it's a very different socioeconomic breakdown in terms of schooling. How was that? What is your just overview? Because I speak from a background where most of my clients out here deal with the higher end private schools or things like that. So I have one viewpoint of education out here. What's been your experience so far at a Title I school? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so I forgot to answer in your original question. I did teach middle school this entire time. So I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. That's where my niche was. But when it comes to Title I, my first year of teaching was in 2018. And so before COVID, and I loved teaching in South LA. It was the best 3 years ever. Because the kids were so low socioeconomically, they worked really hard at school. So they would be in every before school club. They were in every after school club. They were in every lunch club, every sport, any activity and club that they could do, they were a part of. They worked really hard in school. They really wanted to impress their teachers. And I think it's because they knew that education was going to be one of the only ways that they were going to be able to get out of their current reality. And I loved working for those students. They are super inspiring. I think about them all the time. Unfortunately, COVID hit during my time there, so then we went online, and this was before everybody was a one-to-one iPad or Chromebook school, and they didn't have internet at home, and a lot of their food came from school, a lot of their activities, a lot of their social clubs, and so I think COVID played a really interesting role in changing that type of drive that the students had, because once I switched and we went back to school and I ended up switching to Northridge, I saw a very different side of students because they were at home for a year and a half and they didn't really have that motivation, I believe, as much as they did.
And you think do you attribute that to just spending so much time on, tech? Do you attribute it to just taking time off? How would your work ethic just disappear?
Both those things. I think having so much technology at home, I always thought when I was teaching online, I was like, I am even shocked that I even have this many kids in my Zoom class, because if I was 12 and my mommy and daddy went to work and they told me to log into class, it wasn't going to happen. If I had my phone, I'd be scrolling on TikTok too. So I think they had to be mature in order to attend classes during COVID. If they didn't have parental oversight, because a lot of them stayed home, a lot of them had to then log their little brothers and little sisters into Zoom, and there's all these different Zooms going on. A lot of kids can't even focus on their education when they're not even sure where they're going to get their next meal because they relied on school breakfast and lunch and dinner every day. I think also just having so much technology, lack of scheduling and oversight. And I think maybe also parents tried their best, obviously, but maybe not instilling the importance of education, because then once they come back, that was kind of like a second thought instead of like a first thought.
Right. Interesting. And now, realistically, we cross paths because you're getting out of the teaching. Well, you are out of the teaching game.
I retired.
Yeah, retired already. Retired at what you said? I think you said what, 28?
Yeah, I'm 28.
How does that feel to say? Retired at 28.
It's great. It makes me feel a little better than saying resigned. So I'm like, retired. I like it.
Now, why did you throw in the towel? Why did you quit? Retire.
I didn't quit. I retired.
Retire.
I retired because it just wasn't what it was anymore. And there was just so many things that had changed in my very short 7 years of teaching that I couldn't continue. I knew it wasn't sustainable for me for another 25, 30 years. One of the changes of being student behavior, I've never seen such poor student behavior before. Lack of motivation from students wanting to learn or seeing the importance of education, lack of parent involvement. When I would call home, many times parents would not even be willing to hear anything that I had to say. And then lack of administrative support, which depends on your school, and that can look like a lot of different things. But when it comes to admin support, when it comes to behavior, and when it comes to parents, they would just kind of turn a blind eye. And it was like, if I didn't hear about what happened in that class today, then I don't actually have to deal with it. And so those are many of the reasons why I decided to retire. It was too much of an emotional tax on me when I cared so much. And I cared more than the kids cared. I cared more than the parents cared. I cared more than the admin cared. And when I'm the only one caring, it really, really drains you.
Burns you out.
Yeah. So that's why I decided to.
It's curious. I did some research in terms of to prep for this podcast in terms of teaching turnover rates. And I just did a presentation this past weekend where I talked about trainer turnover rates, right? As a trainer, as a health coach, practitioner, clinicians, all of it. We are at an all-time high in our industry. And funnily enough, you are at an all-time high in your industry. And it is not the first time that I've heard the burnout conversation. Do you attribute it all to COVID? Is it just a new ecosystem in terms of kind of like, this is the world we live in now? Because it's not just Title I. It's not just a you problem. It's a big problem. In people I've met out and about, from times people I've dated, people that I'm friends with, guy, girl, it doesn't matter. This is across the board in terms of these frustration points. So do you think this is just a current problem? Does it come from COVID?
I think there's a lot of reasons why our education system right now is the way it is. I think COVID, like I talked about, has a part in it. But I think the lack of parent support, but parent education on what their role is in their students' education. I think when we were growing up, or I'll speak for myself, when I was growing up, my parents played a pivotal role in my education. They knew my teacher's name. They knew every subject I was taking. They read to me. My mom read to me Harry Potter every night for like 6 years. I had flashcards in the car and I would memorize the state capitals. Like, they were very hands-on in my education. Like, I knew I was going to college when I was in kindergarten. Like, it wasn't a if, it was like a when. And so, whereas now I feel like a lot of parents are having kids and don't understand that their being hands-on in their students' education is very important for their kids and for the school in general and the education system. And so a lot of them parents now believe that, oh, I just dropped my kid off at school, and they kind of think of it as like a daycare, and oh yeah, they're going to get their education. I trust that they're going to do what they're supposed to do. And so then that's not really what's happening. Their kids get dropped off and have zero want or need to follow instruction. They don't care about their grades. They don't care about failing. I think that whole No Kid Left Behind act is leaving every kid behind, because now you're putting a kid in 8th grade that should have never passed 3rd grade, and then should have never passed 4th grade, and should have never passed 5th grade. Now you're in my 8th grade class. You read at a 2nd grade reading level. You can't do simple math, and I'm asking you to go grab data and make a chart.
Right.
But I do have kids that can grab data and can make a chart. And so it's like there's just such a wide range. And so it really is just a struggle as a teacher when I have kids that are in such wide range of education levels, of English levels, of writing levels. And so I think it's a lot of different things, but I think a lot of it does go back to the parents, because especially if I have rules and expectations in my classroom, but then when they go home for the next 16 hours and they don't have to follow those same rules, it's like mine don't even cancels out.
So you've given so many major points. Admin is one piece. The actual school district, parents is one piece, right? The actual student piece. Am I missing one to kind of is it like a triangle? All three of them kind of have to come together for success, or am I missing a piece to it?
I think teachers can be played in there too. I think
so, like a square.
Yeah, square.
Like a square.
I think teachers play a huge role, of course, too. Like I work, unfortunately, with teachers that are there to collect a paycheck and just be friends with the kids and, do all the work for them. I have a teacher that gives 100% to every kid because they showed up. So there's a lot of academic integrity that can be lost through teachers. So I think that's a part as well.
Okay. So leaving that up there as the fourth piece to our quadrilateral. Sorry, I just felt like I had to be a little spicy. Leaving the teacher portion, because we can't control what the teachers do. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But realistically, managing parental influence and then student engagement. This whole podcast is about anyone who listens giving tactical solutions, things to really try and start to fix problems in your own life. And every single person I have with kids, the kids are losing. Right. So, and when I say kids that I have, like clients that I train that all have youth, I end up seeing somebody in a session where it's like I'm training mom, and mom is frustrated by this, and this with school, or dad is over there frustrated with these three things about little Johnny. And I want to give them the opportunity, and listening to this when I send it out, to have a different perspective in terms of how they start to implement themselves into their lives. So let's just go down the list with the student. We have student behavior and motivation. How can parents interject specifically on those two pieces, the student behavior and the motivation? How can parents interject into their child's life to make sure they're getting 1% better, stepping up in school, behaving a little bit better, finding a little more motivation? How from your perspective do you coach that?
Yeah, so I take that topic very lightly because I'm not a parent. So I feel like a lot of my advice, I sometimes laugh to myself because I think I know what's best, right? But I'm not a parent. So I can't even, sometimes I feel like I can't say my opinion on that. But when
I want your opinion.
Okay.
Say it. It's not an offensive thing. You're trying for the best of your parents, of the ones who actually listen to this. The point is to help them. Maybe you're going to say something they've never thought of. Maybe you're going to trigger a spark that triggers another spark in them. And the whole point is to just broaden horizons. What is your take? How can you help?
Yeah, I think if I was a parent and I wanted to improve my students' behavior, one would be to create a relationship with the teacher, make sure that the teacher knows that you're on their side. Because what I always try to explain to parents is like, one, I would not be calling you if I didn't see this concern. And two, I have no reason to lie. I've called parents, so-and-so punched so-and-so in the face in class today. Oh no, my student's right here, and they said they didn't do it, so they didn't do it. And it's like, no, I literally saw with my 2 eyes. It wasn't like a little Johnny told me. I saw with my 2 eyes, your daughter punched this kid in the head today. Nope, she didn't. So it's a lot of non-accountability. And so I think understanding that the teacher is calling you with the truth, because little Johnny has every reason to lie. I have no reason to lie. I wouldn't be making this phone call if it wasn't truthful.
Right. You're not maliciously coming after little Johnny to ruin his life.
Exactly. Like I don't, so a lot of parents just don't believe anything this teacher has said. So creating that relationship with the teacher, because it's hard to accept some negativity about your kid if you don't even know who the person is and who they are in your student's role or in your student's educational life. So that's one way I think could be improved. When it comes to motivation, I think playing a hands-on role in their students' education, like going to back to school night, contacting the teacher in the first week of school, or if the teacher hasn't reached out, obviously themselves, saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so's mom and dad. We really are excited for this school year," whatever, and keeping that relationship going, following up with them. I mean, grades are posted nowadays online, live, 24/7. So not asking, necessarily keeping a follow-up of what their grade is, because you can obviously always check, but just keeping that open dialogue and asking your student, what did you learn in class today? Especially if they're in middle school and they have 6 or 7 different classes. I hope they learned a lot that day. And so keeping up with their homework, asking them how things are, who they're hanging out with, what sports are they a part of any clubs, and really being a part of your student's life, not just I dropped them off, I picked them up, let's go get a snack at McDonald's and I'll take you to football practice.
I see a lot of help in terms of people that I've worked with, in terms of families. I see a lot of help doing the pickup and drop off. I heard, and maybe it was my mother, and she talks from a place of what just worked best. But she always would talk about the first about 45 minutes that immediately I would walk in from the bus, the 45 minutes to an hour right after. So it was the rawest moment of post school. She would get the most out of me. And so it was a situation where if you really want to embed yourself into your students' lives, have someone there to talk about. Like you said, how was school? What did you learn? When we talk about learning, something for parents to think about, you learn 90% of what you teach. So if you have your 5th grader or 6th grader teach you, basic level mathematics in terms of multiplication sitting at the counter while you're cooking dinner or while, you're doing your work, he's or she is learning those base fundamentals again. So it's like a double dip there. I like the reach out the first week of school and follow up. Because I was going to say, how do I create a relationship with the teacher as a parent? So that's good. Do you have any other, from the teacher side, little, I wish parents did this to create that relationship with you?
I think sometimes, especially depends on the age of the student. So for example, like I had 200 kids. If I got an email weekly from parents,
You'd be inundated.
that'd be my full-time job. So not overly, I don't mean like overly reach out, but just checking in, or I've had parents that are like, "Hey, so my student said this happened in your class today. I just wanted to hear from you." And I'd be like, "I didn't even know that happened. Had no idea." So it's okay to clarify some things. I think also if you do have a concern with the teacher specifically, reach out to them first before their admin. You can always CC the admin, of course. But, I always try to explain to parents that us 3 should all be on the same page. We are all on the same team. Whenever I email a parent, I say, "Hey, Johnny," right? I don't say Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because we are a team. And as long as the teacher, the parent, and the student all realize we're on the same team, we all have the same goal, and the goal is for your student to learn and be successful, then life is just going to get exponentially better.
Right. Everybody. Right. Everyone is here to support little Johnny.
Yeah. And I think one more thing I would add is keeping the same expectations that you would expect your student to follow in school, for you to keep those same expectations at home. So for example, it's really difficult for my kids to not cuss in class, because they cuss in class. They're like, "But I do it at home. My mom doesn't care," right? They have they don't see any problem slapping their friend next to them. Well, I slap my brothers and sisters all the time at home. So it's a very, when it comes to behavior, the expectations are not the same. And so if you wouldn't want your student to do it in class, maybe don't allow them to do it outside of class.
Right. What about admin? Same kind of questions. So what do you see kind of going wrong in terms of admin support? And then realistically, how do parents start to take control of this piece to the puzzle?
Admin are in an interesting position. Growing up, I always wanted to be an admin. So I was like, if I go into teaching, I want to be an administrator. My aunt, who's been teaching for 30 years, she told me, "Tell me that again after your first year of teaching." And after my first year of teaching, hell no, would I ever be an administrator. So that's one point I'd like to say. But when it comes to admin, I think, like I said earlier, a lot of the support is only there if they're unable to turn a blind eye. And turning a blind eye is very easy for administrators. They are pulled in a million different directions. They have meetings all day long, but they're focused on the students, but then they need to do classroom walkthroughs. And so I think when it comes to administration, they really need to support the teachers better when it comes to behavior and following through with discipline. What's discipline outside my classroom? Like I have a list of like 35 different interventions that I would use for a student, and I would go through my list. All right, like everything you could think of, but at some point it's out of my hands. Like if I have done 35 different interventions, clearly that means it's not a me problem. And I think sometimes a lot of administrators are like, oh, it's you. Did you try developing a relationship with the kid? Did you do X, Y, and Z? And it's like, yes, I have done A through Z twice over. Following through with expectations. If you have a set of standards for a suspension, then following through with suspension when the kid follows that. If you just threw a pencil at my head and all of a sudden in the eye and blinded me, and that's one of your rules under suspension, then I expect the student to be suspended for a day. But we're going to make excuses as to why we can't have that happen.
So there's no follow through.
There's no follow through. And same with, well, we very rarely would have students get expelled. But yeah, there's no follow through and turning a blind eye. And they kind of don't want to deal with the teachers that ask them for help, which is like their whole point is to help. So it's kind of like this weird setup where it's like, I tried everything myself. So if I'm coming to you, that means I'm asking for your help. Whereas some teachers, right, they just are like, he was being annoying that day, send him to the office. Like there were teachers that sent kids to the office, the same kid every day for the entire school year. I sent kids maybe 8 times the entire school year.
Only when you need to.
I mean, when I called to get that kid picked up by security, that was like a serious thing because I did everything that I could. So taking those teachers more seriously would be helpful.
How can parents help with the admin or vice versa? Is that even possible?
I think admin, when I said they kind of have a difficult job, is because they really do care a lot about the persona and the, what's the word I'm trying to use? How the school is presented. What's the word?
That was pretty well said. I understand it. How the school is presented, what the forward-facing view is.
Yeah,
right.
How it's being shown, and so that's why they don't we have a record. Oh, we suspended 200 kids last year. Would you want to send your kid to a school that gets suspended that they're having so many behavior problems that there's 200 kids are getting suspended? Like in my head, I'm like, perfect. That means they're doing their job. But I don't think that's how society and how the community sees that. And so I think admin are so worried what parents think, and parents do not care at all what admin thinks. And so it's kind of this weird, interesting, relationship where at the end of the day, I think admin should side with the teacher, but very rarely do they. And at the end of the day, most admin will side with the parent and do whatever the parent asks.
Well, it sounds like they're siding technically more so for the case of the school and playing the fence, right? They'll play whichever one makes them look best, right? So then same question, how can parents influence or get a better result from admin? Is that possible?
I feel like only the parents that have misbehaved students would even deal with administrators. That's kind of the sad part about one of the reasons why I didn't want to eventually go into administration is that the administrators very rarely see the great honors kids, the ones that are making a difference, that start a new club, that are amazing and great and have a 4.0 and are so fantastic. So it's very difficult for parents to have a great connection with admin when their student is, I don't want to say average, but average or above average, because the admin are only worried about those bottom ones, the low behavior, the low academics. Those are the ones that are getting the parent contacts. And so I think sometimes it could be difficult for a parent to have a good relationship with the admin because they're only being really contacted by an administrator for a negative reason.
Right. What is it? 20% of the mouths get 80% of the energy or something like that. There's like a fun little quirk that basically it's, as you look at the breakdown, that low percentage, whatever it is, depending on the school, that's where all the effort goes to try and pull it up. It makes sense.
No, and that's another reason why sorry to cut you off.
No.
Another reason why I left teaching was because I wanted so badly to give the kids that showed up every day with their supplies, ready to learn. a great education, but I was spending 90% of my class period dealing with the kids that don't have their supplies, don't want to be there, are not following instructions, are misbehaving, and it's really a bummer. And that's what I tried explaining to my admin, is that I'm so emotional over this because I know I can give an amazing education, but I'm just not given the ability to, because I have to deal with these 7 heavy hitters that are calling each other absurd names and won't stop touching each other, and they can't sit down, and they're just running the entire classroom because it's 33 against 1. And I just feel so bad for those kids that are in the front, ready to learn, have their supplies. And it's just a lot to juggle. And it really would take a toll on me emotionally because I wanted so badly to give those kids a great education. And sometimes I just wanted to message home and be like, please email the counselor and have them switch to a different class period because they really would learn so much more in this other class. But I can't really do that because you can't have 60 kids in one class and keep 70 or 7, in one. Yeah.
So it's almost like you're bound a little bit. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
100%.
Interesting.
100%.
This is why I brought you on. See? Yeah. When for those listening, when I originally met her, right, we were talking about the clinician conversation and her podcast, and I just off the cuff was just like, what got you into this? She told me about the teaching thing. And then it was like starting to ask her just little bits and pieces about why she changed. And she started to open up just like she's doing now. And it was a fantastic conversation. And that's what kind of springboarded this. Is it's very seldom, very rare that you find people who are open and honest about past professions and who come from a current background in it. Usually what you'll find is a teacher of 40 years who's 20 years removed and willing to now talk about what they used to know. You're fresh, right? When was your last school year? Last year?
I think I ended this last June. So 8 weeks.
Okay. So you're as fresh as we can get. You're still steaming. That's awesome. I can't thank you enough for the honesty, because that's what I want. Because like I said, I want parents, because that's realistically the first and foremost people who would hear this. I want them to be able to step back and just start to rethink how they're viewing their child's education. The whole point of the podcast, the Live Vybrant podcast, is to get someone to live more vibrantly, whether it's the parent, whether it's the child. At the end of the day, that's your job, and the parent's job is to support their child. So maybe this is just a different light to a different way of thinking. I don't know. We kind of hit on a little bit with the student section. I'm taking notes. That's why you're hitting so many good points. I don't want to forget things. But we talked about, as one of the corners of our box, parent support and parent education, like engagement. Do you have any more thoughts there? Right? Because we talked about playing a role, reaching out to the teachers first week, following up, all that good stuff. But do you have more in terms of your head and kind of what you meant by parent support and parent education?
I think I really summarized that when it comes to parent education and parent support, supporting the teacher, supporting that the teacher knows best. I mean, even a first-year teacher knows what should and should not be happening in their classroom, especially as someone with 7 years experience. I look really young, so a lot of parents, once they meet me in person, are like, you're on my first day of teaching ever. Mind you, I was 21, so I was young, and they were like, I'm in the office, you have to turn in the schedules of the kids that didn't show up to first period, so they know who didn't come to school that day, kind of thing. And if they come late, they can pick up their schedule, whatever. And this parent is like, you are not a teacher. And I was like, I definitely am credentialed, 7th grade science. And she's like, you are way too young to ever teach my child. And I was like, all right, I have my master's degree at 21, but okay. So it's a lot of just pushback always, and it's not just always about looks, obviously, but just they don't really trust maybe the education system enough to think that the people there are the masters in teaching their student that subject. And so I got a 4-year science degree and my master's degree in education. I am the best person to teach your student 7th grade science. I can do it. We just need to all be on board and make sure that we're all on the same team.
So there's a little bit of humility that has to be at play from the parents and from the teachers, realistically.
Parents think they know best because they do know their kid, right? I just met them the first week of school. I've known them for 5 days. You've known them for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
But kids are very different once they don't have their parents on top of them, and they like to, make him bend the rules. So just, reminding we're all on the same team.
I heard a very interesting little story yesterday about a young man. One of my client's sons has a friend, and the friend is supposedly the most well-spoken, please and thank you, calm little dude when he's around the parents, or it's a one-on-one with the son. But the minute they get to camp or the minute they get out into a group, he has a major little man complex. I guess he's shorter in terms of the group. To anyone who's relative in size, he's super aggressive and competitive. He hits, he pantses them. He's super assertive. But the minute he's around a parent, he's perfect. So when people talk to the parents, I guess it's, oh my God, this is what he did. And then the parents only know their exposure, right? You only know what you see. And so it's a weird, and it's kind of funny that you're talking about it today, because I'm thinking about that story of it's got to be hard to kind of on blind faith trust a 28-year-old that I just met one time that she's telling me exactly the truth. It's a leap of faith, but you made a good point in the fact of you have not, you as the teacher have nothing to gain from talking bad or bashing the child or getting after him, right? There's no point to lying. Why would I be calling you for my own health because I want to do this on a Friday night? What?
Literally. So then I always try to, if that's the case and they're like, oh, well, Johnny doesn't ever do this, and come on down. I said, my door is always open. You don't even need to give me the date and time that you want to come visit your student at school. My door is always open. I'm putting on a show 7 days a week, 5 days a week. So come on down.
7 days a week. I'll come in on Sunday.
Sit in my desk chair and watch your student. Watch your student. So we don't need to play this game on Does He Act Like This? Come see it for yourself, actually.
I like it. Come on in. Well, listen, I'm going to steer the car a little bit, kind of turn away from it. Something I love to do with people, and I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Like I had said before, getting people to think differently in terms of your own personal health and wellness right now, right? Completely changed gears. Where are you at? What questions do you have in the back of your mind right now? What have you been facing in terms of struggles with health and wellness?
Well, I'm on summer break, so my health and wellness is very high, I feel like, right now.
Oh, you went the other way. You're turning it up.
Yeah.
I love it.
The happiest I've been. So amazing. Speaking of that, this is not answering your question, but
no, go.
When I was going through a difficult time teaching, I was seeing a doctor for my general physical kind of thing. And they were like, oh, how's work? And I just started crying. And they were like, everything all right? And they actually tried putting me on SSR because I was such a difficult year teaching. And I was like, no. I said, I'm going to switch schools. And I did. I said, let me, try to solve the problem myself, not through medication. Because, those have a lot of negative side effects. And so I was like, I don't need that. Thanks, doc, but I'm good. And I ended up switching schools and things got better, yada, yada, yada. So there's been a time throughout my career that my health and wellness was not very good, but on breaks, the second you can step away, I think I may be a little different because I'm not going back to school in 2 weeks like all my other friends are. And so I'm sure their anxiety, the Sunday scaries, the summer scaries, school's going to start up and you're going to get another group of kids and go through the same BS as you did. I don't know if I could say that.
You can. This is wide open.
Okay. I should have asked that before. But whereas right now, I feel like in my life, my health and wellness is pretty high. I have so much time to really take care of myself mentally and physically, and I'm doing pretty good.
That's beautiful. You're the first person that's come on here that has been able to give me that as an answer. Because usually it's I like to have a 5 or 10 minute of just ask the expert, right? Because a question that you have might be someone else's question. And everyone all of a sudden it's and then it's super intricate questions, right? That's amazing. Good for you. I'm really proud of that. When do you start your next endeavor?
My next endeavor in a couple weeks here. So I'll be back to the grind, but happily, I think starting something new, learning a new skill is something really exciting. And I love to learn. I always say I'm a lifelong learner. That's why I became a teacher in the end, was because I just see the value. I want to know everything about everything. And so that's why I'm excited for my next endeavor.
And because we spoke before we got on the actual podcast, what is the next endeavor?
So I will be a 911 dispatcher in a couple weeks.
Okay. Okay. It's she had made a comment of everyone keeps telling her of like, oh, that's such a drastic change. And I said the same exact thing. She's like, no, there's a lot of copy, a lot of same skill sets that she's seeing. Yep. I love that.
They're like, it's stressful. You know what's stressful? Being in a room of 33 kids that all are on different needs, that half them don't have the supplies, half them don't want to listen to you, half them are pressing the storm and touching each other. Like, that is stressful. Having a phone call, asking some questions, clarifying some locations, and, the status of the patient and sending first responders, I think is honestly going to be less stressful.
It'd be a much more controlled setting.
Yes, I'm just sitting at it. It's not on me, right? They say in dispatching, like, you're only as good as your reporting party. So, like, I can only put as much information as I'm given. So, yeah, no, I'm excited. I think I'll be successful. All my friends and family are like, yeah, you're going to be fine.
And you're not afraid to talk, which is a good thing. You're not afraid to just like run the thoughts that are in your head, which is great. Obviously, they're going to give you probably a script or a series of questions to ask, but right.
I think
that's awesome.
Good pro questions. I did that for 7 years because that's another thing in teaching. A lot of teachers just give the answer. Well, no, that you need to work for the answer.
Well, no, I like that. Well, good for you. I'm excited for you. I think it's going to be great. Why did you choose first responding? I didn't ask before. Why that?
It's always been something in the back of my head. My boyfriend, who's a fireman, he told me, like, in our first couple weeks of dating, he was like, you would be an incredible dispatcher. I don't know if you know that. He's like, I don't want you to be a dispatcher, though, because I don't want you to be on my schedule. I like how you're home at 3 o'clock every day, and have every weekend off, which I also enjoyed. But the second that I decided, to retire, he was like, okay, you need to be a dispatcher. He's like, you would just be so great. And so I've just kind of always had that in the back of my head, and I'm really excited.
Good for you. I think say?
Go for it.
No, I was like, something I love to kind of ask as I wind down podcasts, right? Is what do you do to live your life more vibrant? And what one or two things would you tell somebody else to do to live a little more vibrant?
Live a little more vibrant. I think one, being your true self, as you kind of said, like I am a very authentic, blunt person. Now I know when not to share my own opinions, of course, other than this podcast that you were like, please share them. But in my personal life, I'm more than happy to keep my mouth shut, to live more vibrantly. But sometimes my good friend always says, like, you're really only in control of yourself, and if you can't control the situation, there's no reason to stress about it. And so I live a lot about that, like, through that. And so taking care of myself, and then my other piece of advice would be to obviously, like, go outside. I think going outside, whether that's a walk with a friend, walk alone, listening to a podcast, exercising. I just recently went to Mammoth, just did a few hikes around the lakes. Like, anything like that really fills my soul personally. And so when you're stuck inside all day, which I love being home, don't get me wrong, I love to be home. But what really fills me up is going outside in nature,
getting out and about,
exercise.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
Doing all of that. Yeah.
Yep. It's a little controversial, but I want to see what your thoughts are from kind of the insider scoop, right? So things like critical race theory, budget cuts that have happened, there's a bunch of different things that the government is kind of like imposing. Should they, shouldn't they, all that good stuff. What are your thoughts on it from behind the scenes? What's your take?
Yeah, I think when it comes to budget cuts, that's one of the reasons why I ended up resigning, was because, like, for example, my county got rid of pink slipped over 1,000 teachers. And that's because of budget cuts, because we got so much money during COVID and we used it, because in education, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, like, let's say you have $100,000 that you have to use on field trips, I'll say. But if you only use 70,000 of that year, you don't get that 30,000, and next year they're going to know, oh, you only needed 70,000 last year. We're only going to now give you 70,000 this year. So you have to spend pretty much every dollar that you get every year, which sometimes is more difficult than you think, because a lot of it has to be allocated in very specific ways. And so because of that, we were given so much money during COVID that we were able to create so many positions. Like, we have so many. Do you know what a TOSA is? A teacher on special teacher on school assignment. So it's someone who's just a credentialed like me, but they don't work in a classroom with students. They have other tasks outside. So we have like a testing coordinator. We have a STEAM TOSA, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics coordinator. We have a magnet or honors coordinator. We have all these different positions. Oh, English language coordinator,
Understood.
math. So we were able to have all these positions, and then because of all these budget cuts that happened this year, of millions of dollars, they had to let go of all those teachers that replaced those TOSAs because they went out of classroom, and because all those TOSAs are tenured, they put them back in the classroom, so they had to pink slip a lot of their staff in order to retain those TOSAs.
And what does a pink slip mean, just for the uneducated?
Pink slip is you got terminated, your contract will end, and not because of your wrongdoing, not because you didn't perform the way you should have, but just because of budgets, pretty much.
Okay, cool.
So it's getting let go due to budgets. And so that's been a big change recently, especially this year. Also talking about budgets, when it comes to Title I, I've been really lucky because Title I receives a lot of money from the state for working out a Title I school. Now, different schools use that Title I money very differently. At my first school, it was all about supplies. We had 2 classrooms worth of so many supplies, you would not know what to do with it. If I needed anything, I walk into that room, no questions asked, grab what I need, we're good to go. My second school used that Title I money to lower class sizes. So, for example, instead of me having 5 classes of 33 kids, they would buy another teacher. So now we would have 3 science teachers instead of 2. So now my classroom size went to 33 to 20, and now I have all classrooms of 20 students, which is super helpful. One way another school uses Title I money. I couldn't tell you what my third school used Title I money because I didn't see. I think it was maybe for those TOSA positions, I think, having maybe not more classroom teachers, but more TOSA positions. But budget has a lot to do with how sustainable the school is going to be. And that's what's great about these budgets is you can spend them in the way that the school needs. So my first school needed supplies, whereas my last school, I couldn't find a pencil anywhere. There was no pencils to be found. I couldn't get a box of markers if I begged. So when it comes to budget, it does play a big role in how successful the school is.
Yeah, interesting. What about, lastly on this, but what about some of the things that you're forcibly, told you have to educate on? I use critical race theory because it's been super controversial, but, how does that impact your classroom? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends and family have talked to me about this a lot too, because they're like, what is happening? But what's great about teaching is that I am given the curriculum from the state. So like the state of California, or I'm given the standards from the state. So the state of California tells me what standards I'm going to teach. Then there's like approved curriculums of so many that your school chooses, and then you teach that curriculum. Now, no curriculum's amazing and fantastic and has everything that you would want as a teacher. So that's why I like to become a teacher, because I can use other supplemental instructions and supplemental lessons to help infuse and incorporate into my curriculum that I'm given. So I think when it comes to science, there's not a lot of controversial topics other than like flat earthers or like the Big Bang Theory and evolution. That would be like the toughest ones that I would have had to kind of work my way around. But I'm not an English teacher, so it's not like we were reading any controversial things. But it kind of goes back to parent involvement, and that a lot of parents, I don't even think they knew we were learning about evolution. A lot of them probably didn't even know we were learning about the Big Bang Theory. So I didn't really have any pushback. The only pushback I ever received was per my school, science teachers had to teach sex ed. And so I did teach sex ed for 6 years. 6 out of my 7 years. And there were only like 1 or 2 times that a parent is allowed to refuse that. And so they would have their student not be a part of those lessons because it's about a 4-week curriculum that I had to teach. And so they would go to a different teacher's classroom and learn something else. So they were getting educated, just not on that. And so that's the only controversial thing that some parents were like, nope, I don't want my students to learn about that, which to each their own, right? I think it's very important. So there are no accidents, but so that's the only controversial stuff that I've had to deal with. But And a part of that sex ed is about gender identity. So we did talk about gender identity, but I think when you start the lesson or the curriculum, like, guys, this is like standard by law. I have to teach this. We're not going to make jokes. We're not going to be funny. Like, we're just going to get through it. We're going to have a fun time, but we don't need to like make it something it isn't. Once you're like have that, that's why we always did at the end of the year when you have that relationship with the kids. And it made everything so much easier. So
interesting.
Yeah, I've never had any problems, but I haven't really.
So I think really it boils, you had hit the nail on the head. It boils down to playing a bigger role in understanding what the education of your student is about, or like what's happening, right? Playing that active role, having your hand in it, just not turning a blind eye. So that's a great point. That's awesome. Thank you. That's really it for that.
My aunt, who teaches at a public school, but a very prissy public school. And we would always talk because I worked at Title I my whole life. So we have very different stressors. And so hers are parents and the curriculum. They want to sit down with her on the first day of school and be like, what curriculum are you going to be using? What's the main ideas that you guys are going to be talking about? Books are you going to be reading? Who's the author by? And they are very hands-on. So like I said, this is my experience with non-hands-on parents. But there are so many schools and so many communities where parents are very hands-on and very into their students' education. And then that goes back to, then you have to defend this curriculum, but you didn't choose the curriculum. The school chose the curriculum or the district chose the curriculum. And so comes that, interesting kind of dynamic and conversation.
Understood. And I thank you so much for coming on today. It's absolutely wonderful to talk to you. And thank you so much for your honesty as well.